Hello, and welcome back to IntelligentPod, the show where we explore the wonders of the mind, the science behind our daily lives, and the art of living more intelligently. I'm your host, Sophie Lane, and today we're diving deep into a topic that's as old as humanity itself, yet as fresh and relevant as our latest heartbreak or misunderstanding. That's right. Today's episode is all about the science of forgiveness, healing ourselves and others. Forgiveness. The very word stirs up a swirl of emotions. Maybe a sense of relief, maybe a pang of pain, maybe even a little resistance. We all know we should forgive, but what does that actually mean? And why does it sometimes feel so difficult? Today, we'll break down the science behind forgiveness, explore its psychological and cultural dimensions, and most importantly, discuss how embracing forgiveness can genuinely transform our lives for the better. Whether you're struggling to let go of a past hurt or simply curious about how forgiveness impacts your well-being, this episode is for you. Let's start by painting a clear picture. According to a 2020 study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology, nearly 60% of adults say they struggle to forgive someone close to them at least once a year. That's more than half of us. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Life brings all sorts of slights, big and small. An argument with a friend, a betrayal in a relationship, a harsh word at work. Sometimes the wounds are deeper. A parent's absence, a broken trust, a long-standing family feud. These hurts can linger, shaping our moods, our health, even our identities. But what actually is forgiveness? Let's clarify, because it's often misunderstood. Forgiveness isn't about pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's not about excusing bad behavior or letting someone off the hook. The science tells us that forgiveness is an internal process, a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance towards someone who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve it. In other words, forgiveness is less about the other person and more about setting yourself free. Now, why is forgiveness so important? Both for our own well-being and for our relationships. Let's look at what the research says. A landmark study conducted at Stanford University found that people who practiced forgiveness reported lower levels of anxiety, depression, and anger, as well as higher levels of hope and self-esteem. In fact, the benefits of forgiveness are so significant that some hospitals and mental health centers now offer forgiveness therapy as part of their treatment programs. Physiologically, holding on to grudges can actually harm us. Chronic anger and resentment keep our bodies in a state of stress, releasing hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this state of heightened arousal can weaken our immune systems, increase our risk of heart disease, and even accelerate aging. So when we say forgiveness is good for your health, we're not being metaphorical. It's literally true, right down to your cells. But there's more. Forgiveness isn't just about our individual well-being. It plays a crucial role in our social lives and cultures. In some societies, forgiveness is built into rituals. Think of confession and absolution in many religious traditions, or the truth and reconciliation processes in post-conflict communities. These practices help restore trust, rebuild relationships, and strengthen social cohesion. Let's take a moment to bring this down to earth with a real-life example. I want to share the story of Eva Kor, a Holocaust survivor who forgave the Nazi doctors who experimented on her and her twin sister at Auschwitz. Eva's story is extreme, but it's also incredibly instructive. She spent decades consumed by anger and hatred. But when she finally chose to forgive, not for the perpetrators, but for her own peace of mind, she described it as an act of self-healing. She didn't forget what happened, and she certainly didn't condone it, but she freed herself from the chains of bitterness. If Eva could find a way to forgive in those circumstances, it makes me think, maybe there's hope for all of us, no matter how deep our wounds. All right. Let's explore forgiveness from a few different perspectives. First, the psychological perspective. According to Dr. Robert Enright, a pioneer in forgiveness research at the University of Wisconsin, forgiveness is a skill, that can be learned. He developed a 4-phase process: uncovering your anger, deciding to forgive, working toward understanding the other person, and finally, discovering release and meaning. It's not always linear, and it's rarely quick. But the process itself helps us move from victimhood to empowerment. Then, there's the neuroscience angle. Functional MRI studies show that when people recall a hurt and then practice forgiveness, their brains light up in regions associated with empathy, moral reasoning, and emotional regulation. In other words, forgiveness is literally rewiring our brains for greater emotional intelligence and resilience. From a cultural perspective, the concept of forgiveness varies widely. In collectivist societies, forgiveness is often seen as a duty to maintain harmony. In more individualistic cultures, forgiveness can sometimes be misunderstood as weakness or surrender. But the scientific consensus is clear. Regardless of culture, the act of forgiveness, when freely chosen, promotes psychological and physical health. And let's not forget the spiritual dimension. Nearly every major religion promotes forgiveness, not just as a virtue, but as an essential path to peace and liberation. Yet, you don't have to be religious to benefit. Forgiveness, at its core, is a human need. Maybe you're listening and thinking, okay, Sophie, I get it. Forgiveness is good for me. But how do I actually do it? I hear you. Forgiveness is easier said than done. Let's break it down into actionable steps you can try in your own life. Step 1. Acknowledge your pain. Don't minimize what happened or how it made you feel. Suppressing your feelings just buries them deeper. Step 2. Reflect on the impact. Who was affected by this hurt? What did it cost you? What did it teach you? Step 3. Make a conscious choice. Remember, forgiveness is a decision, not a feeling. You might not feel ready right away, and that's okay. But setting the intention is the first move. Step 4. Try to see things from the other person's perspective. This doesn't mean excusing their behavior, but understanding is often the bridge to letting go. Step 5. Release the hold. Write it down, say it out loud, or share it with a trusted friend. Some people find rituals, like writing a letter you never send, can be helpful. And finally, step 6. Give yourself grace. Forgiveness is a process, and you may have to revisit it more than once. That's normal. Here's a tip I love. Whenever I feel stuck in resentment, I remind myself, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. It's a cliché, but it's true. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. As we wrap up, let's recap what we've talked about today. We explored the science of forgiveness and how it benefits both our physical and mental health. We looked at psychological, neurological, and cultural perspectives, and we heard the inspiring story of Eva Kor, a woman who found peace through forgiveness in unimaginable circumstances. Most importantly, we broke down forgiveness into practical steps you can use, starting today. So, here's my closing thought. Forgiveness isn't always easy. It's not always quick, but it is always possible. And when we choose to forgive, we reclaim our power, heal our hearts, and open ourselves to deeper connection with others and within ourselves. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps more people discover IntelligentPod and join our community of curious minds. For detailed show notes, links to studies, and more resources on forgiveness, visit IntelligentPod.com. And if you have thoughts, feedback, or a story about forgiveness you'd like to share, email me directly at sophie@intelligentpod.com. I read every message, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Remember, forgiveness is not just a gift you give others. It's a way of healing yourself. Until next time, stay intelligent, stay curious, and take good care of your beautiful mind.